Welcome to episode 10 of Riff and Chips. I'm your host Phil Vernon, and today our guest is Karl Middleton, vocalist of UK metal legends Earthtone9. Earthtone9 were one of the driving forces of the late 90s and early 2000s UK metal scene, with their first 3 albums showcasing some of the best of what Britain had to offer at that time. After an 8-year hiatus, they returned in 2010, and in 2014 released their 4th album, before retreating back into the shadows for another break. They're now back for round 3, and I spoke to Karl ahead of the release of their 5th album, In Resonance Nexus, and a slot at Arctangent this summer, a festival that takes its name from the title of their incredible 3rd album. Join us as we discuss some of the bands gone by from the early 2000s UK scene, Earthtone9's return from the wilderness, and the frustration of being palmed off with fries over proper chips. Karl, welcome to Riff and Chips.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I just want to start off by saying I don't want to make you feel old, but I've been listening to your music for 25 years, so I'm really stoked to have you on the show. It's quite a big deal for me.
Yeah, thank you.
A lot of the other people I've interviewed have been kind of peers, people my sort of age, maybe a bit younger, so it's nice for me to talk to someone that I was listening to as I was getting into the scene. So we'll start, as we always do, by asking our guests how they kind of first got into heavy music. So what was your story in getting into heavy music when you were younger?
A combination of the token rock kid that came to my middle school that had AC/DC and Iron Maiden patches.
Yep.
And then listening to Live After Death.
Yep.
And then a few of us getting into thrash. And then also my dad's record collection. You know, he was big into Led Zeppelin, Neil Young, and had Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds. So those real bombastic kind of 70s records.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then got into thrash. Then got into alternative metal, and then loads of my friends were in bands, but I kind of missed the boat to pick up an instrument.
Yeah.
But no one could find a singer, so I was like, well, there's a gap. I'll give that a crack. And it kind
It's like being a singer or a drummer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like drummers are never short of bands.
Yeah.
You talked about obviously going from thrash, which I assume was the quite typical, US thrash scene, the Bay Area thrash scene, all the kind of the big fours and stuff. And then when you say more into alternative metal, I assume that's more kind of like the early 90s, like the typical Korn, the Deftones, the bands like that? Or?
No, do you know what? Actually, pre that. So, when I was 15 when Faith No More put out The Real Thing.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
And then when I was 16 and 17, Jane's Addiction started getting played in rock clubs.
Yeah, nice.
Pop Elite itself had just put out This Is This. So there was like those sort of embryonic reimaginings of what heavy music could be.
In terms of like the UK scene, what were the first UK bands that really grabbed you? Outside of Led Zeppelin and stuff, obviously.
Yeah. Onslaught, probably. Yeah. When Steve Grimmett joined Onslaught on the In Search of Sanity tour, I saw them at the Astoria. And so I was really into Overkill as well. So like the Years of Decay and that In Search of Sanity record were really big for me. And then my older cousin was in a band in the 80s in Bristol, and so I would always kind of like hear about him. And so that was one of the sort of first band I heard them on Radio 1, like on the Tommy Barnes Rock Show, and I was like,
what, your cousin's band?
Yeah,
that's cool, isn't it? Yeah,
maybe it wasn't Tommy Barnes, but like, there was a Battle of the Bands thing that used to happen once a month or some shit like that.
Yeah. Coming into when you got into music and started playing in various bands, obviously going back a bit earlier than we kind of often get the chance to do on this podcast, the kind of early 2000s, there was a big scene in the UK at the time. You were quite a big part of that.
Yeah.
You guested on albums for a few of those artists, such as Vacant Stare,
yes.
Landmine Spring.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other bands from kind of like around that area, the kind of like early to mid 2000s that you were perhaps playing shows with, touring with, or whatever, that maybe aren't around anymore that you kind of remember quite fondly and want to maybe direct some of our younger listeners towards?
Okay. I mean, Medulla Nocte.
Yeah, huge. Yeah.
Unreal Band, Unbelievable Intensity, Lab Rat.
Yeah.
Also phenomenal band. Snub, I played with quite a lot. Had a kind of downset vibe to them, but they weren't just derivative. They were doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And then they were an interesting sort of melting pot of the band members had been in other bands before. So there was just lots of interesting, cool stuff going on there.
Obviously, you were a big part of Copro Records, and you had the whole Copro Records and also like Loudspeaker Records. It was like that sort of era with like obviously like Landmine Spring. Again, these are bands that I was very much into at the time when I was younger, but bands like Stoopy and was it Jaw? There was like all those sorts of bands that were around in that sort of like ones that I guess they never quite they put out a record and then they just kind of like phased out. They never quite, I wouldn't say got anywhere, but they never quite took it to the next level. But there's a lot of kind of one album bands around that time that I still like to visit from time to time now. That
there are a few bands. Ian Glasper, I don't know if you remember him. He was a bass player in Stamping Ground, but he had a label that was put out a lot of good stuff.
Okay.
Like UK late 90s, early 2000s, metallic hardcore kind of stuff. There's a band called called Underrule.
Yes.
That were amazing. And then there was a band called Above All that got signed to Roadrunner, and it was like a big deal. They were from the sort of South End scene.
Okay.
And after that kind of folded, their singer Tony did a band called Light of the Morning that was really great.
Yeah, that's not a band I recognise the name of, so I'll have to go and check that out as well.
It felt like there was a lot of cool stuff going on that was kind of like Shai Hulud. That sort of really aggressive metallic hardcore vibes.
Shai Hulud, a huge band, inspirations for a lot of my early bands. I used to play in like melodic hardcore bands and stuff back in the day, and I was probably never quite good enough to play riffs like Shai Hulud.
They're tricky.
Yeah, exactly. But the melodies and like the kind of energy and stuff. Watching those on some of those like earlier Hellfest videos and DVDs and stuff and things like that. And
dude, have you heard that last album they did about 5 years ago? It's called Beyond the Reach of the Sun. It's like
the one that they did with Chad again. Yeah.
Yes, it's like unreal.
One thing that I found out quite recently, and it was through when I first set this up and chatting on Twitter about things, and someone was saying, and apparently it's not like a secret, it's all out there, that the album before that, Misanthropy Pure,
is it?
Apparently they recorded it all at half the speed and doubled it.
No way.
Apparently he came out in an interview and said, we did this and I really regret doing it. Like, I wish we hadn't done it.
Wow.
Yeah, I only found that out recently. It's not taking anything away from it. I still love that record.
Yeah.
But yeah, great band. Now, as a lot of people who listen to the podcast will know, I try and focus particularly on the UK scene. And it's fair to say you're certainly no stranger to a UK supergroup or two over the years. So before we get chatting about Earthtone9, let's go through a few of the projects that you've been involved with over the years.
Okay, yeah.
Firstly, we'll start off, you were in a band called The Blueprint.
Yep.
With members of Consumed and Pitch Shifter. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, how was that? Because those records were quite, not a huge departure from what you were doing with Earthtone at the time, but they were, I'd say, would you say a bit more fun because of that punk influence that Consumed guys brought in?
Yeah, well, I mean, Consumed were part of that sort of Fat Records, like great musicianship and songs, but with some humour in the lyrics kind of thing.
Yes.
And that wasn't what The Blueprint was about, but that sort of energy of punk rock with the sort of intensity of what Pitch Shifter were doing and what Earthtone was kind of about in terms of my top lines felt like it was a potent mix. And so I think it wasn't that Earthtone had run its course. Matt, his time was done with Pitch Shifter, but Consumed was still a sort of going concern. So it felt like a kind of like a busman's holiday where we got to keep doing music, do music to a high standard with people that we knew and liked and respected. But it felt, we always joked that it was like not punk enough for the Consumed fans, not industrial enough for the Pitch Shifter fans, and not quite metal enough for the Earthtone fans. But I think we explored some interesting musical ground. It felt good to do it. Earthtone just felt heavy at that point, as in, there was loads of baggage. It had got quite tired and tiring. And so it was just a breath of fresh air. And Matt and Chris and I are working on a new Blueprint album now. That's
great. That's good to know.
It'll probably come out in the year 2100 or some shit.
Yeah, one of those nice pipeline dreams. Yeah. Talking about, doing music with people that you like and respect, again, following on the supergroup theme, you had some involvement with, and it's probably fair to say, it's probably easy to say who wasn't involved with them, but This Is Menace.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really great idea because it was generally the same kind of, it was the main kind of core band members, wasn't it? And then they had basically a different vocalist pretty much on every track, didn't they?
Yeah. From memory, it was basically Jace, Bold and Mark. It was like their baby, their thing. And, they're very creative guys that were interested in writing sort of across the map, like a range of heavy music. And so, I mean, my experience with Totality, it was like they were like, we've written a song. It seems quite moody. It's quite mid-paced. It feels like it might have been an Earthtone song in a different universe.
Yeah.
Do you want to write a top line for it? And so I did. And then, we did a bunch of cool shows. It felt like a early 2000s UK scene reunion every time we did stuff.
Yeah.
Never quite knew who was going to be in the mix until I got there. And some
never knew who was going to be involved. Yeah.
Sometimes they're like, oh, you know what, Colin can't come, so can you do his tune? And or oh, Matt, I don't think Matt from Funeral could ever make it, so I might have done his song a couple of times. But
busy man at the time.
Yeah, I got to go to Pukkelpop, which is in the Netherlands, and we played on a stage just before Neurosis, and those guys go way back with the Claydons.
Yeah.
And so, we got to hang out with them. So for me, I'm a total fanboy for that band. So there was wonderful and amazing things happen when you do music for long enough.
Yeah. So for anyone listening that isn't aware of This Is Menace, I think they did two albums, I think it was, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. In kind of like the mid 2000s, I want to say 2000, I want to say about 4, 5, 6,
something
that
like
sort
that,
of era. So every track had a different vocalist in from bands at the time. So we're talking, actually, we've got Karl, Matt from Funeral, as we've said, the guys from Sixth, like Jeff from Carcass, Casey Chaos, Colin from 100 Reasons. Anyone that was kind of in mildly to relatively successful UK band at the time was basically involved in that kind of in some way. And they're both really good records to go and listen to. Like I say, really interesting themes, can be quite almost like predate you, almost like metalcore in parts. There's some real like heavy sort of like chuggy bits, some like huge riffs, but then there's some that, like you say, a bit more mid-paced, a bit groovier. And they kind of did that really cool job of getting in the right vocalist for the right song. And I think that's what made those records.
Yeah, they curated it really well.
Yeah, 100%. Another band that you did, which you actually reignited again recently, was Blackstorm.
Yes.
With Neil from Fall of a Fraffer and Joe from, I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Nod?
Yes.
G-N-O-D. Yeah.
John from Nod.
John, sorry, yeah. You released a couple of singles over the past couple of years for Blackstorm. You've played the odd show. I know you played in Bristol with Pitch Shifter.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there any more to come from that?
Not right now, no. Neil's in Earthtone. So, I mean, he's got a solo record out and he's writing another record. Basically, like what happened was I got a job in 2014 and I lived in Detroit for like 5 years.
Okay.
And so, it was great. It was running a music school, really cool, but I didn't get to do much music. It was all about supporting other creatives to realize their ambitions. And so I basically had like a laundry list of all the people that I kind of missed that I wanted to hang out with and create with. And so that's part of the reason why there's been this, it seems peculiar, but it's just like this reignition of stuff that went sort of dormant for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Neil is such a riff king. And I'm just like, dude, you've got some great songs. Let's just do some stuff. And every now and again, I sort of badger him and poke him with a stick enough that he's like, fine, okay, well, So it's just one of those things where it's a passion project. And when the stars align, we write something and then it gets recorded and then it feels like it'll be a cool thing to do to put it out.
Yeah, because I mean, Fall of a Fraffer, they were huge for me.
Okay.
Back then, like I was a real big fan of that band. I think they were one of the, not the first band, because obviously I'd definitely been to more, not that they were an extreme band, but obviously they were a bit more like kind of like crustier, kind of real big, heavy, to describe the people that don't know them. It's kind of like a mix between like Cult of Luna and kind of almost like Black and Crust Punk, big, huge guitar layers, isn't it? But then lots of energy, lots of rawness. And, a lot of the people in that band have been in various projects since one that's going to the most, Morrow, which features, again, is a bit of a super group of all sorts of people. So like Dave from Fire Apple Red and stuff is in it. And again, that's quite similar, kind of heavy, kind of fast, crusty, but then still with quite big layers. But another band for people to check out that maybe aren't aware of them 100%.
Yeah, I mean, they're a great band. They evolved quite a lot across the span of 3 records. And like you said, they went from interesting D beat that had cello on it to like these very elongated song forms, like where one song is like the entire side of a record, 24 minutes kind of thing. But yeah, they were great.
So talking about Neil, obviously that brings us kind of back around to Earthtone9. So as I was saying earlier, as a band in the kind of early 2000s, you were huge for me getting into music at the time. So I was 15 probably when kind of Arctangent came out, and then the Omega EP especially, I still listen to that probably monthly now. It's still one of my favourite EPs.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's really stood the test of time. I think I managed to see you once before you initially kind of called it a day.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I was really stoked whenever 13, 14 years ago when you kind of decided to fire things back up again. So what was the catalyst for getting things going again after those 8-9 years away?
So the way that we did the band first time round, a lot of it was about pace and the awareness that bands that were on bigger labels had more resources. You do a record, then you play tour for a couple of years, and that was like the model that aspiring bands were also using.
Yeah.
And we were just like, we did an album a year. So it felt like we burnt through like a decade's worth of activity that happened in 3 years, basically.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
And so it just felt like it was done and it had had its time, and it didn't feel like a joy or exciting to do. And it also felt permanent.
Yeah.
But then, we were also in our 20s. So then, over time, it's like you get enough space between what you did and where you're at to be like, it was important creatively. It's still like probably the most important thing that I've ever done in terms of what we did with it and how I felt like I grew within it. And yeah, so then we all started talking, and it was like, oh, it would be great to get together and hang. And, music and creativity had always been the lens through which those relationships, that was like the anchor point for those relationships.
Yeah.
Over time, you stop hating each other, you stop holding grudges, and then you just sort of kind of gravitate back together.
Yeah, bands are such a kind of microcosm of life in general, aren't they? You're constantly in kind of high stress environments, whether it's touring in a van or in a studio or creatively clashing over writing songs. And like you say, a lot of the time you start bands with close friends. That's where it comes from. You want to play music with your good friends, and it can be awful sometimes seeing those little kind of divides starting to creep in as that one little argument over something. When you look back at it, it doesn't seem it at the time, but when you look back, it's something super trivial.
Yes.
But, that one little trivial argument, too many, all of a sudden you're tipped over the edge. It can fracture quite easily. So, like you say, I think that classic time being a great healer, but I think it really is, especially in band situations, to take yourself away from that and just kind of just be mates again without having to worry about all that other stuff in the background. And then...
Well, I mean, it's such a curious thing because there's intensity in that sort of proximal nesting of relationships. So it's basically like being married to 4 people at once.
Yeah.
But it's also a career. It also, when you're young, you often don't have the language to articulate exactly what it is you want or what your motivations are. And so the sort of well-meaning cop-out is that everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
But unless you have the capacity to talk about it and have very, very frank conversations, you never really know that stuff. So it's band tension always boils down to someone getting a disproportionate amount of credit in the eyes of others, or someone not pulling their weight according to others, or someone being a little bit intense or less likable or less easygoing. It's just, and none of that stuff would matter if you were just hanging out down a pub.
Yeah.
But it matters when you're trying to do something that's going to be put out into the world, that's a statement about who you are and what you believe. And if you're going to spend, like a shitload of time at the back of a van, I guess the workaday world equivalent would be, you're literally using all of your holiday or vacation time to sit in a vehicle with people. And, most people can't do it with their families.
No.
Christmas dinner can be rough for some people. The hard truth of it is that, unless you're an exceptional group of people with chemistry and understanding, it's just you light a fuse and you've got a finite amount of time.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. I think, it's a pretty good analogy of it all. Those bridges got built and you kind of popped back in 2011, put out an EP for Cause and Consequence, put out a live album in 2012, and then the 4th album in 2013. I remember I saw you in Bristol on a tour around that time with The Ocean and Maybe She Will.
Yeah, the Thekla.
Yeah, which is a great mixed bill, like 3 bands I really like. Yeah. And like you say, you had that step from, a very kind of post-rock, almost like quite soundtracky, very elegant band in Maybe She Will. And then you had, The Ocean, who were this just absolute assault on the senses in terms of intense, heavy, and then you guys that kind of like sit somewhere in between.
Yes.
So I remember that being a really interesting bill. We talked about momentum before. It must have been nice to have kind of had that consistent activity back and a bit of momentum for a couple of years then.
Yeah, it was. And, at that point we were in quite a sort of preaching to the choir situation where we'd done a pledge music was happening. So that there was, if you had a fan base or had a fan base and there was a way to contact them directly, you could do direct to fan kind of things. And so that felt really great and DIY. And it was just that album, it was kind of a reflection of where we were at that point.
The next question I had here, I was going to say that from 2014 onwards, other than the Pitch Shifter shows that you did in 2018, that you were kind of pretty dormant, really, but that would explain the 5 years in Detroit, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we did a 20th anniversary show at the Underworld that I flew back for, so it was in 2016. And then we did those handful of shows with Pitch Shifter. And then I moved back at the end of 2019, and then we had the COVID years, which kind of closed everything down.
Took a lot of the momentum out. Yeah, because obviously, so we'll get to Arctangent, the festival, shortly. I'm not sure if you were announced for that, either one or both of those COVID years potentially, and then obviously they got cancelled, and obviously you put out a kind of statement in 2022 to kind of say that you were going back into hibernation, called time on the idea of maybe releasing any new material. So you say that's kind of come from, I guess, not hitting the ground running when you came back from Detroit, I suppose, and not being able to kind of get going in the way that you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, there had just been lots of songs got written, lots of, it was like a band by post, but digital post kind of thing was going on. And it felt like when we listened back to the songs, it didn't feel like they were good enough, or we couldn't find agreement on what was good about Earthtone.
Yeah.
And so, it kind of felt like the default was the continuation of the kind of sound we had on 4, which was, basically like muscular down-tuned rock. It had become, good songs.
Yeah.
And that felt good for a while, but it felt like we'd mined that seam and we weren't finding anything better than we'd done before in it.
Yeah.
And, COVID was a heavy time, and it just felt like Owen's the principal sort of songwriter in terms of stuff starts with him.
Yeah.
And he felt the call to do something much more metallic.
Yeah.
And, Cy, the drummer that has been there pretty much all through the history of Earthtone, he's a rock guy.
Yeah.
And so they just, they weren't on the same page. It was like trying to figure it out. And then sometimes you just have to recognize that it's a square peg round hole situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Owen had all these songs. They felt great. We had kind of written them in the COVID era. So he was, his software's moved on. He was instead of having to bring riffs into a rehearsal room and then kind of bicker about them, he was able to fully realize stuff and then be like, this is how I see it.
Yeah.
That's a really big shift for in a band situation where people are just used to coming up with their own parts and it's sort of feeling organic.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how we got to sort of where we are really with bringing in a different drummer, Jace Bald actually from This Is Menace, and Pitch Shifter played on the album.
So I was going to say, the first thing that kind of jumped out to me with the single that came out, Oceanic Drift, a couple of weeks back, someone who's been a fan for, 25 years or whatever, one of the first things was the drums were quite different, especially in regards to kind of like the fast feet. And I was like, oh, this is slightly different. I wonder what this is. And then obviously doing a bit of research for chatting to you, I saw that Jace Bald had come in to play drums, who, obviously, like you say, Pitch Shifter, This Is Menace. Is he even Bullet for My Valentine at the moment as well?
Yeah. Yeah, he's been doing that for 15 years or so, maybe 10 years.
Oh, has it been that long? Yeah,
it's been a while.
I remember them changing their drummer, but I can't remember it being so long ago, yeah. But Oceanic Drift, like we say, so came out a couple of weeks back, sort of mid-March. I'm super into it. I think that metallic sound coming back from the 4th album, like it sounds, dare I say, like a bit more Earthtone, I guess, like the guitar tones, the pace of the songs, just the way that the songs are built and layered and the way that they move on. It really does feel like kind of classic Earthtone sound. It's had a really positive reception from what I've seen looking around. So it must feel good to have, firstly, so many people excited that you're kind of back and after all this time are still excited to hear new music from you.
Yeah, it's amazing, dude. I mean, every time we considered reigniting it, it's like, does it matter? Is there a place for it? What's the point of doing it? And because at various points, the only point of writing music was for its own sake. And so it felt like it was about pure expression and about getting back to a point where it was like, we love these songs and they have the energy and the intensity and just the heaviness that we wanted in music.
Yeah. So is the rest of the album, is it all in a very similar vein to Oceanic Drift?
No, I mean, it covers the usual spread of Earthtone doom. But I mean, we've pushed the boat out further, I would say. So it is heavier and faster, but generally speaking, it feels like the fury of it is reasonably well aligned with off-kilter enhancement.
Okay.
So serpentine placement, Simon says, about a third of the songs on this record are like that, but just pushed a little bit more in terms of pace.
Yeah. Okay, great.
And then it's got the precision of Arctangent, but it has the sort of songwriting evolution and subtlety that was present on 4, but it's just not through that rock lens.
Yeah.
So it feels like the sort of culmination of all of those cool elements. And it's got, there's a lot more dissonance on it. So it has some of that low definition Discord experimentation.
Oh, so it's a real kind of mix.
Yeah. Feels a little bit more metal. And so, those earlier albums were looser. Before we worked with Sneap, they were, we were like, done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
We want the humanity of it. Mistakes are all part of the richness.
Yeah.
Let's not get on a poisonous quest for perfection. Let's just capture who we are in a room. Yeah. But then we reached the conclusion of that and wanted to do something slightly different. I'm excited to see what people think. I mean, as you've already mentioned, the principal difference is like the busyness of the drums and the way that the drums are pushing things forwards in a way that they haven't really done before.
So obviously you talked about working with Sneap there, obviously legendary producer, he needs no introduction to anybody. Am I right in saying that the new record, to be fair, as soon as I heard it, I was like, I'm pretty sure I know who's produced that. Then I looked into it and you went with Lou Johns, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Record. Yeah. Because obviously Lou's, like everything he touched turns to gold at the moment. We've had a few people on the pod already that have recorded their records with him, like the guys from Burner and Pupil Slicer. He's getting involved in so much nowadays and it's all sounding so great. So how was it to work with him on the new record?
It was amazing. He's pretty chill. Do you know what? He's one of those rare-ish people where I think he can very rapidly understand what the essence of a band is and he can figure out ways to amplify that.
Okay.
And I say that in opposition to a lot of producers just put their production onto other bands and make the band sound like they're part of the producer's catalogue.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like he, it sounds way more modern, contemporary than stuff we've done before, but that's partially by virtue of the fact that we have such long gaps between what we're doing at this point in time. So, but when we were just like, listen to the last Employed to Serve record, a recent one, it was like, damn, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And then Svalbard as well. And it was like, okay, that heaviness and that intensity is where we feel that we should be at this point in our lives and career and with this material.
Yeah.
And that's the guy.
Like you say, everything with that, the Ithaca record, like you say, Burner, Pupil Slice, like everything that he's kind of touched over the past few years has been, you can't really go far wrong really going.
But he's also very creative and he was also has a really strong melodic ear. Yeah. And so he was coming up with great ideas that really enhanced the material.
So Karl, are we ready to talk chippies?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the section we like to call Okay, so we're into the chippy chat section of the pod. So one thing I just need to clear up is geographical location for yourself, because obviously Earthtone9 were a Nottingham-based band. I know from what you're talking about now, you've been in Brighton-based bands. So you've said about Detroit. Where is it you're based?
Right now, I'm in West Wales. I live.
Okay, so you're in West Wales now. Okay, so you've moved on again. Yeah. Where is it where you grew up? Were you in Nottingham?
No, I grew up in Surrey.
Oh, right, okay.
And then I moved to Nottingham for the band. And then I moved back down to Reading for a job. And then I moved to Brighton for another job. And then I moved to Detroit for another job.
So we've got lots of comparison for chippies then here. Yeah. So whereabouts in West Wales? It's a part of the area of the country I know quite well. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty close to Cardigan.
All right, okay. Yeah. Me and my wife visit Aberystwyth most summers.
Nice. Yeah, that's where I work at the moment.
Well, we're talking chippies. Obviously, there's an incredible chippy in Aberystwyth. I always forget the name of it now, next to the car park.
Okay, do you know what? I haven't had the pleasure yet.
Oh, you should try. It is generally one of the best ones I think I've been to. I forget the name of it now, but so in the centre of Aberystwyth, there's like a little car park, and it's the big chippy just on the corner there. There's a few obviously chippies in Aberystwyth, but that is it's really worth visiting. But which local chippy are you taking me to? I'm
taking you to Banker's Chip Shop in Brighton.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yes,
so we're going to the coast.
Yeah.
Is it like a kind of old school chip shop? Has it been there a while? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it's old. It's an institution in the town. It's actually like on the Brighton Hove border, I guess, but it's in like an Art Deco-y looking building.
Oh, nice.
The chip portions are heroic. I mean, if you get an extra large chips, you don't need anything else. And it's like 100 yards down to the beach to eat your chips and fight the seagulls to keep them.
Yeah. To be fair, it sounds like there's enough to go around and share with the seagulls.
Yeah, it's wild, dude. And I always have curry sauce and I always have mushy peas.
Perfect.
And very occasionally, if I'm feeling like ultra greedy, I'll have like a spring roll or something like that.
Oh, so that'd be your kind of like side. So rather than like a fish or a sausage, you try and get like a spring roll or something.
Do you know what? Generally, I find like chip shop batter is just, in the moment, I'm like, this is amazing. And then not long afterwards, I'm like, this is not amazing. So I just generally keep it simple. Pure carb.
Yeah.
Just
pure carbs. Pure carbs and some sauce to dip it. Do you get plenty of salt and vinegar on them as well, or?
Oh yeah. Well, good amount of vinegar, moderate amount of salt.
And if you're carbing it up, how often do you get like a bread roll or something, or a bread and butter to go with it?
I mean, oftentimes I like pop to the supermarket next door and buy a loaf of bread or something. I think about making chip butties, but
Yeah.
But I've never knowingly bought like a balm or a bap from them and put chips in it. It's just...
Yeah, I mean, you are kind of paying premium. I mean, that's the thing, you can, for the, they might charge you, say, 80p for a bread roll. Like you say, you can get a loaf for the same. So it's convenience over cost, I guess.
It's also one of those things where I'm like, no, there's too many chips. I don't need to have a chip sandwich. And then I walk out feeling like I've been a grown up and then get my instant regret.
Yeah. There's something about it. It's one of those things that like Americans find bizarre. Obviously there's things we find bizarre about them and there's things they find bizarre about us. But I know food's obviously always a joke between different countries. But I know one of the big things they think it blows their mind that we put fries or whatever, or chips on a sandwich. So it was like, but then I mean they put peanut butter and jam on. So who are we to
horses
argue?
For courses, isn't it?
Yeah,
whatever's
exactly.
normal's normal.
So in your kind of travels, obviously you're on the west coast of Wales now. You've been on the south coast. Nottingham is about as landlocked as you can get in the UK, really, in terms of being far from the coast.
Yeah.
Did you notice any kind of major differences in chippies in the various areas you've gone to? Things that you can maybe get in, I could only ever get that in a Nottingham chippy. I couldn't get that maybe down in Brighton or in Wales.
My main thing is I have a real issue with like French fries being palmed off as chips. You know what I mean? I need chips that are the size of my thumbs.
Yeah, proper chippy chips.
Yeah, like legit chips. And sometimes in cities, mainly, like kebab shop kind of situation, it's just like these aren't chips, are they? They're French fries, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's only the sort of thing you get caught out with late at night. But everywhere I've lived, there's been like a legit, properly good chippy with it.
Yeah, that's good. That's what you want. You mentioned mushy peas there. I'm just going to come back. So again, because I wasn't 100% sure where you were from. So you lived in Nottingham for a few years, I'm guessing, when you were in the band. I worked with a lad from Nottingham and he told me about this a couple of weeks back when I started the pod. And so I was like, right, I've got someone coming on who has some sort of link to Nottingham, so I need to ask them. He was talking about a mushy pea van that used to be at the Goose Fair in Nottingham.
Right.
Is this something that you're laughing at? I don't know if this is something you're aware of. And apparently it's quite a famous thing. And it's a van that used to serve mushy peas, just pots of mushy peas mixed with mint sauce.
Wow.
At the Goose Fair in Nottingham. And apparently, and he was like anybody who's from Nottingham, but I guess you're maybe not from Nottingham. He's like, will know about it. He's like, it's a proper like famous thing. So I thought I'd ask you if it was something you were aware of.
I was not aware of that. I remember the Goose Fair, but it's just like a big deal thing that happened annually. But I don't remember anything about mushy peas.
So you don't remember queues around the block? It's like, what's that for? Is it for a fairground ride? Oh no, it's for the mushy pea van. You'll have to ask some of the guys from Nottingham and see if they're a bit more aware of it. Did you get a can of pop when you go to the chippy?
Generally no, but sometimes I'll push the boat out and get ginger beer. Yeah,
we've not had a lot of ginger beer calls yet. It's one of the more classic ones. We've had a few. We've had like dandelion and burdock, and someone had some like a proper kind of like shandy. Some we've had on there as well,
like a panda shandy kind of vibe.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they meant that or like a. No, I think no. In fact, I'll tell a lie. They were quite specific, like a Ben Shaw's shandy, rather than a Panda Pops one. So ginger beer kind of fits in with that kind of more old school can of drink, I guess.
Yeah.
Did they have a good selection of cans at the chippy? What was it say it was called?
Bankers.
Bankers.
Yeah, generally, yeah. I mean, it's one of those places where there's like, it's real big. So there's like a restaurant in one half, and then there's a separate area where you can walk in and, do takeaway kind of thing. The last time I was there, they had like fridges, full selection.
Is it on the front or is it just set back?
It's just set back a couple of streets. So it's on it's like literally 50 metres from the sea.
Like I say, close enough to walk down and meet them afterwards. Mm-hmm. Now, another question we ask people is, would you ever order anything to eat whilst you wait? But I guess if you're not waiting for a fish in the fry or anything, most of the stuff that you're getting there is kind of already ready in the counter, is it?
It gets done pretty rapidly.
Yeah, so you're not thinking, I'll just have a little sausage to eat while I'm waiting or something.
No. In this place, because it's like a lot of footfall, a lot of traffic, quite often you're waiting a long time to be served. But then my experience has been that once you're speaking to someone, the food comes pretty quick.
Yeah, because they know that they've got a high turnover. They know that they're not going to be wasting food at the end of the night if they keep kind of churning it out and just keeping it up to speed. I think that's fine. If you're in a busy chippy, especially if it's a Friday night and everyone's getting their chippy tea, I'm all for shouting up for your fish on the way in. But if you know it's not going to be sat there for more than a minute or two, then I don't see the harm in mass churning out all the main items. Anything that resembled fish and chips when you're out in Detroit? We've not had any kind of takes from that yet.
No. Hell no. No, I mean, Coney Island's a big thing in Detroit. So, like, basically hot dogs with like a quirky gravy that's got like quite onions and.
Oh, right, okay.
I never ate it, but it was like quite a thing. Yeah, and then amazing Mexican food.
And obviously the Detroit style pizzas, not like the Goodfellas ones you hear about here, the kind of proper Detroit style deep dishy rectangular tin ones. Did you have any of those when you were over there?
Yeah, I mean there was a few real nice pizza places, but that whole Midwest style deep pan and stuffed crust, it's never really been my bag.
No.
But yeah, I mean there's just loads of great food in Detroit, so it's
one of the places in the States I've never quite visited, that kind of like, central northern part.
Yeah.
I would like to get up to there in Chicago and stuff. Right, well, we're in the section of the show now where we like to give you the opportunity to kind of talk about what's coming up for your bands over the next couple of months. So we call this section... So this is the section that's called Plug It. So obviously you've got plenty coming up over the next few months. Why don't you tell us about it?
Okay, so the album In Resonance Nexus comes out on the 21st of June. Got another couple of lead-off tracks that are going to come out between now and then.
Great.
And then we're playing Arctangent. I think we're on the 17th. We're playing the Saturday.
Okay.
And then, right now, because we've been away for so long, we're just looking to get a read on how much interest there is in us doing stuff. If I was to be like, what do I want the rest of my year to look like? I want to play Bloodstock. I want to play Damnation.
Yeah.
I want to do some European shows. It would be nice to get back to Italy, Spain, France. It would be nice to do a little run of UK stuff.
Yeah.
And then, bucket list. Music's taken me around the world and I've been really lucky. But the way it took me around the world wasn't what I expected, which was it. It wasn't with Earthtone9. It's been like work that's taken me. And so, to get a chance to go to Japan and to Australia and take Earthtone music to those places would be, like incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if in the spirit of attempting to make my own reality by talking about it, that's...
Yeah, manifest it a bit.
Yeah.
So the record, that's coming out on Candlelight, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned Arctangent there. Anything special for that? Because I know obviously in the past they've talked about the previous kind of confirmations of your attendance, which didn't quite work out. There was going to be the Arctangent album played in full, but obviously I guess now with a new record coming out, that's probably not really on the agenda anymore.
That wasn't part of the deal. It was just, come and play some of your music. So we'll probably play half old, half new.
Yeah, perfect.
It's such a great festival. It's such a great crowd that goes to it. I just want to go there and smash it and remind people of who we are and what we do, and that there's vitality in the band. If
people don't know, I mean, the festival's literally, James has said, he's literally kind of named it after the album, like it's no secret. But like you say, it's the best weekend of the year. Like I always book immediately for the year after as soon as one year finishes. I was lucky enough to play last year, which was
amazing.
A bit of a dream for me. So that was amazing. But yeah, I'll be there this year. I think this year's lineup's particularly strong. Any year that Meshuggah play, I'm always excited.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. It looked like a joke flyer, like my best festival ever that's made up in my head. I was just like, oh.
And that's what I think every year for me. I'm like, it's, people joke about, I'll be made to curate your own festival. Like James does it for me every year. Like I do, either that or Fortress Festival maybe this year up in Scarborough with all the really good black metal festival.
No.
That's pretty much that, and Arctangent is basically my entire listening. So yeah, so that's all great. I think that's everything we normally cover on the show. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for asking.
It's been great to chat to you. Like I say, huge part of my musical life growing up. So thank you for the kind of music over the past 25 years. Really looking forward to the new record, and I'll definitely be at the front for Arctangent.
Nice one. Take care, dude.
Cheers, mate. Thanks. All the best.
Bye-bye.
That was Karl Middleton from Earthtone9. He took me to Banker's Chip Shop in Brighton and got an extra large bag of chips to share with the seagulls with a good amount of vinegar and a moderate amount of salt. He'll get curry sauce and mushy peas, and if he's feeling particularly hungry, he might treat himself to a spring roll. He'll wash it down with a can of ginger beer. The Riff and Chips charity t-shirt is now available to order. All proceeds will go to Bristol food-based charity The Mazzy Project. They're £15 each and have worldwide shipping. Head over to riffandchips.bandcamp.com and put in your order now. As always, I want to see your chippy teas too, so don't forget to tag us in any pics or let us know your favourite local chippy on socials using @riffandchips. Thanks to Rob Collier for providing the dive bomb, Edgar Gibbs for the screams, and Ryan Westwood for the artwork. See you in a week's time for our next episode.